With the end of the two-week ceasefire between the US and Iran fast approaching, President Trump has in the last hour announced that he's extending it until Iranian leaders come up with a proposal and discussions are concluded one way or the other. Writing on social media, Mr. Trump said the US was to maintain its naval blockade against Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz, but that he'll give Iran extra time to allow it to submit and discuss proposals at the request of Pakistan. Well, in a moment, we'll speak to Lyse, Doucet, who's in Tehran for us. But first, let's go to Washington and to Sarah Smith. And what are we to make of this, Sarah?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? This very rapid turnaround from President Trump, which he is framing as something he did at the request of the Pakistan government. Now, I think he's doing that quite carefully, so it doesn't look like a rapid climb down. But remember, just hours before he announced this open-ended ceasefire, Donald Trump was speaking to CNBC on television, saying that he was ready to start bombing again, that he expected to have to do that his military were raring to go, and he was repeating his threats to destroy every bridge and every power plant in Iran. And then hours after that, he has agreed to a ceasefire more extensive than the two-week one that was just about to run out. Now, throughout this conflict, Donald Trump has used social media and statements on television and elsewhere to issue very aggressive, bellicose threats against Iran, talking about the destructive power of the US military and the damage that he could do inside Iran to try and force them to agree to a deal. But now, for the second time in 2 weeks, he has backed down from his threats of escalating the conflict, making it look very much as though he wants to wind this down and get out of this war rather than to extend it. And that in itself will send a message to Tehran.
Seeing President Trump speaking there, and we will, of course, be listening out to what he has to say. Let's turn now to Lyse Doucet, who's reporting from Tehran on condition that none of her material is used on the BBC's Persian service, which broadcasts to Iran. These restrictions apply to all international media organizations operating in Iran. And Lyse, you said that the Iranians are still deciding whether to attend talks with the US or not. What difference are Mr. Trump's words likely to make to them?
Well, I don't think they have much faith in this process. We were at the foreign ministry this afternoon, and we're told the foreign minister was locked in meetings. They were still exchanging messages through mediators, but they still hadn't decided whether to return to talks with the United States. And we sat down with the foreign ministry spokesperson, Ismail Baghai. He had been at the last round of face-to-face talks in Islamabad. He listed all the reasons: President Trump's threats to bomb Iran, its naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, the seizing of an Iranian vessel, all of which, he said, were ceasefire violations. So I put it to him that Iran was also violating the truce. Under the terms of the ceasefire, you said you would completely pull back from the Strait of Hormuz. You haven't.
You remember the first days? Ceasefire in Lebanon was part of the ceasefire package.
So that's agreed now. What about the Strait of Hormuz?
That's agreed. We agreed on last Friday. And you remember what happened after our foreign minister tweeted that Iran would reopen the Strait of Hormuz in accordance with the terms of the ceasefire. What was President Trump's reaction? He immediately said, "Thank you, Iran." And then minutes later or an hour later, he said that, but we would keep our blockade.
Another big reason, of course, is the huge distrust in this process. Remember that the two previous rounds of talks with the US, last year in June, this year in February, were shattered by US-backed Israeli airstrikes. So while Iran would welcome this extension of the ceasefire, they feel there is a real risk of a return to war. And pretty well every Iranian we speak to here believes that too.